guys, today we're checking out the ultimate Canon 1DX Mark II cinema rig. So I've had this idea of making a fully spec'd out 1DX Mark II cinema rig for a while, and just recently I have been tweaking all of the different components to make them all work together and create the best setup. So first we'll talk about the purpose and all of my needs, and then we'll go into the engineering of how I got everything to work together. So this type of setup will actually work for any kind of camera or lens or microphone or monitor that you're using. You can find the link to all this gear here in the top of the description. So right now in this configuration, I have it sitting on a tripod, but it is meant just to go on my shoulder as a documentary sort of run and gun setup. And a lot of the design here comes from the needs of what I am filming, which contains a lot of action and movement, so I don't really have time for a tripod. As you know, I've done quite a few reviews on gimbals and Steadicams and things like that, but for this, I'm preferring the semi-stabilized but still handheld look that this sort of setup can provide. Also, with all the traveling that I do, it's really important to have a setup that can pack down and travel easily, whereas a lot of these gimbals and Steadicams take up a lot of extra space that you don't always have. If you're interested in why I'm using the 1DX Mark II for this setup, I actually made a video just talking about this camera for documentary filmmaking. You can find that up here. Now, my long-term plan and what I love about this system is it's very customizable, so when the Canon 1DX Mark III comes out in about a month, I would easily be able to swap that for this body and leave everything else the same, and we'd be golden. So now let's get to the engineering, and this is still a work in progress, but I'm pretty happy with where we're at. So all of the black rails and the blue parts, this is all coming from a kit made by Newer, and you can find the link to buy this in the top of the description. Last year I was just using a small portion of this with the frame and the handle, and I decided this year I wanted to expand it to the full shoulder rig with the hand grips. This has allowed me to mount this 7-inch Field World monitor right off to the side, and it's actually perfectly in the center so I can look at it and also look at the action that's happening behind it. I'm using the two hand grips out front for a nice firm grip along with the one at the top. Over to the right side we've got the Newer follow focus, and I actually have it positioned perfectly where I could hold the frame with my right hand and use my fingers to adjust the follow focus. For the lens, I'm still kind of debating what I'll be using. Right now I have the Sigma 24-70 f2.8 image stabilized art lens. This provides a nice range to cover a lot of different shooting conditions, but my other options would be some of the Samyang Prime Cinema lenses, which I'm a real big fan of. Those work really great with this setup, and I'm a huge fan of the depth of field they create. However, you're locked at the focal length that you're using, which means you're not going to be able to zoom, and you have to go and switch out lenses, which when you're shooting live stuff is not always very convenient. Alright, now on to audio. So this portion actually took the most engineering out of everything that I'm doing here. I wanted an external recorder, so I'm using the Zoom H4n Pro with an XLR cable up to the Aperture Deity shotgun microphone. For mounting the mic, I tried attaching it directly to the frame, but since this is all handheld and will be bouncing around a little bit, you hear all of that in the microphone. So this Rycote mount is actually made by Aperture. I took off the handle and screwed this into a 15mm rod to tripod adapter hole. Now for the recorder, I knew I wanted to put that in the back for weight. We'll talk about that in a second. And I thought I could just Velcro it to this foam shoulder pad thing, but the Velcro wasn't attaching very well, and I was like, do I really want to super glue all my stuff together? That's probably not a good idea. What I ended up doing was taking a series of metal pieces that kind of just had laying around and bolting them together and screwing it into the tripod back on the bottom of this, so it's sitting above the foam pad, but it's not actually attached to the foam pad. But since it's all metal, it's super secure and won't move around, and that is exactly what I'm looking for. The XLR cable I'm using is a little too long, so I'm looking to get one of these cables like the HDMI for the XLR. Speaking of which, we've got HDMI coming out of the 1DX Mark II, snaking its way down to the monitor, which is sitting on a ball mount with another 15mm tripod thread adapter. These 15mm rod to tripod adapters are actually sold by a company called Small Rig, and they also are making the camera mount that I'm using, which is more of a low profile compared to the stock one that comes with this kit. I should also note that this video is not sponsored by anyone. Don't you love free educational videos? Alright, my final piece of gear engineering, and probably my favorite, is for media storage. So for basically forever since I've gotten this camera, I've been using CFast cards, which are great, however, very expensive. If you checked out my last video on the SolidPod, you already know a little bit about this. Basically, it's a system that uses a dummy CFast card in the camera with a cable up to this device, which is a terabyte solid state drive. That means I can shoot in 4K, which I previously have not done because of storage and not worry about running out of space. Normally the SolidPod is mounted on the cold shoe mount of the camera, but since the frame is in the way, I have it rotated 90 degrees on a different mount, which converts it to the cold shoe, and it all works out just fine. It also looks pretty darn cool along with this whole setup. So talking about weight distribution, I didn't really think it would be as big of a deal as it is when you're holding this for hours on end. If you have too much weight in front of your shoulders, you're going to be lifting it up and taxing all those muscles, and also your shot's not going to be quite as steady, so that's where these weights come into play. Now the kit comes with this one hockey puck sized weight, but I decided I needed a little bit more, so I added these smaller weights onto the back, and it actually works pretty darn well. The system is almost balanced perfectly. You really want your center of gravity to be right in the center of the shoulder piece. So some of the great features of a system like this are you've got this solid metal kind of encapsulating the whole camera and equipment, so you're less likely to break something if something tips over or drops. Also, since it is fully customizable, you can take off the handles and use just this part as an interview mode or something like that. It just all around makes filmmaking a little bit easier. That's going to wrap it up for this video. Make sure to stay tuned for updates on my setup and when the Canon 1DX Mark III comes out. I'm very excited for that. Thank you for watching, and as always, don't forget to keep it pro.